It's 1898. A government chemist named Dr. Harvey Wiley sits along a wooden table in Washington, D.C. In front of him, a plate of meat. It smells normal, looks normal, but it's been treated with borax, a chemical compound used in cleaning products and insecticides. Wiley and his volunteers, later called the Poison Squad, intentionally eat small doses of preservatives to test how they affect the human body. Nausea, headaches, stomach pain, because at that time, borax was being added to meat to prevent spoilage. Not to improve safety, to prevent financial loss. This wasn't an accident, it was economics. And that moment, when chemicals entered the dinner plate, it marked a shift in history. For 250 years, food has not just evolved, it has been engineered. In this episode of The Conspiracy Atlas, I will be talking about food and the secrets from the last 250 years of what we have been consuming and how it's changed in those years. It's 1875. A father walks into a small city market in New York. He buys milk for his children. The milk looks clean, white, smooth, normal. But what he doesn't know is that the milk didn't come from grazing cows. It came from cows fed brewery waste, rotting grain mash. The milk was thin, bluish, contaminated. So manufacturers thickened it with flour, whitened it with chalk, and sweetened it with molasses. Thousands upon thousands of children would die from what became known as swill milk. Yes, swill milk. And this is a real thing that did occur. And that was just the beginning. But what we eat has been shaped by war, industry, economics, and quite possibly decisions most people never see. The industrial appetite. The Industrial Revolution changed more than factories. It changed food. Before industrialization, food was fragile. It was local, seasonal, perishable. Preservation meant salt, smoke, drying, or even fermentation. If crops failed, communities felt it immediately. Scarcity was common, spoilage was inevitable. Then industry accelerated everything. Urban populations expanded, cities grew faster than farms could support them, food had to travel farther, last longer, and even look appealing. And that's when chemistry entered the kitchen. By the early 1800s, artificial preservatives and coloring agents began appearing in everyday products. What once was spoiled naturally could now be altered. In 1858, Britain, bakers added alum and chalk to bread to make it whiter and appear more refined. In the United States, milk was sometimes treated with formaldehyde to mask sourness and extend shelf life. Copper sulfate tinted canned peas, making it look a little bit brighter green. And meat? Well, that's a different thing. In the late 1800s, borax, a compound also used in cleaning agents, was added to meat to slow spoilage. The reasoning was simple. If it looks fresh, it sells. Food was no longer just agriculture. It became chemistry. There was no ingredient labels, no federal oversight, no standardized inspections. Even whatever was always hidden, it was often defended as innovation. Meanwhile, as war accelerated, preservation kind of moved that technology along. During the Napoleonic conflicts and later the American Civil War, armies demanded shelf-stable rations. Canned food became revolutionary. Salted meat, condensed milk, preserved vegetables. Industrial processing wasn't just profitable, it was patriotic. Convenience began replacing purity, but problems accumulated very, very fast. Public health concerns grew, reports of contaminated milk, chemically preserved meats, and altered bread spread through newspapers. One of the most pivotal figures was Dr. Harvey Wiley, who organized controlled experiments to test food preservatives like borax on human volunteers. His work and the public outrage it stirred helped push forward the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act, establishing federal oversight in the United States. But here's the critical turning point. Regulation followed scandal. It did not precede innovation. Profit moved faster than protection, and while oversight improved safety, it did not eliminate manipulation. It refined it. Food had shifted from nourishment to commodity, from sustenance to system. And once a system forms, it rarely moves backwards. From convenience to chemistry. Here's the twist. Not every transformation in food history was sinister. Some were revolutionary. At the start of the 20th century, food innovation generally improved life. Canned good allowed families to store food through harsh winters. In 1912, electrical refrigerators began entering homes, dramatically reducing foodborne illness. In the 1920s, sliced bread was introduced, a seemingly small invention that standardized portions, reduced labor, and accelerated meal preparation. Then came the World Wars. World War I and II forced food science to evolve rapidly. Armies needed rations that could survive transport across oceans and battlefields. Industry responded with powdered milk, dehydrated soups, canned meat, and instant coffee. Food had to travel, it had to last, and it had to perform. After World War II, those same technologies entered civilian kitchens. In 1953, the Swanson TV dinner arrived. A full meal, frozen, reheatable, standardized meals. It wasn't just food. It was something that was efficient, that led to progress. Women entered the workforce, increased demand for convenience. Suburban life accelerated schedules. Processed food was merely a corporate strategy. It was social transformation. Life became faster and food adapted. But as convenience scaled, chemistry deepened. The same chemical industry that expanded during wartime pivoted toward agriculture and food processing. Synthetic fertilizers boosted crop yields, pesticides increased reliability, preservatives extend shelf life. Food science moved from preservation to optimization. By the 1960s and 70s, something subtle but profound did shift. Food was no longer just about feeding people, it was about engineering preference. Sugar consumption climbed dramatically. Portion sizes expanded, ultra-processed foods became dominant in supermarkets. High fructose corn syrup entered the supply chain. It was cheaper than sugar, easier to blend, and heavily supported by agricultural policy. Meanwhile, internal documents later revealed that the sugar industry groups funded research that downplayed sugar's role in heart disease, shifting public health focus toward dietary fat instead. At the same time, major tobacco corporations quietly acquired food companies, bringing expertise in behavioral reinforcement product engineering into the food sector. The objective wasn't simply taste, it was the bliss point, the precise ratio of salt, sugar, and the fat that maximizes repeat consumption and craving. It wasn't hunger, it wasn't cravings, food from sustenance to stimulus. And as globalization accelerated, ingredients began traveling thousands of miles before reaching a plate. Supply chains grew complex, industrial farms expanded into monocultures, efficiency replaced transparency. The modern food system was no longer just agricultural, it was industrial, chemical, and behavioral, and deeply integrated into global economics. From the chemical age to global power. After World War II, the infrastructure for mass chemical production already existed. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizers dramatically boosted crops. It didn't disappear, it pivoted. Pesticides like DDT were widely adopted before long-term ecological risks were even fully understood. Food coloring and artificial flavor enhancers increased shelf appeal. The logic was production. The outcome was transformation. Economic policy began shaping diets. Portion sizes expanded, snacks, foods multiplied, marketing increasingly targeted children directly. This wasn't secret, it was normalized. A small number of multinational corporations began dominating. Seed patents, fertilization manufacturing, processing facilities, distribution networks. Efficiency improved, transparency diminished. Then the 1990s. Genetically modified crops were introduced with processes of higher yield, pest resistance, and resilience against climate volatility. Some argue they reduce famine risk and increase efficiency. Others raise concerns about ecological impact, cross-contamination, and seed sovereignty, particularly when patent seeds require annual repurchase from corporations. Farmers once saved seeds became contractually bound to licensing agreements. Agriculture became intellectual property. Today, in many Western diets, over half of calorie intake comes from ultra-processed food. Industrial monoculture farming dominates vast landscapes, biodiversity narrows, supply chains stretch across continents. Meanwhile, labeling becomes a battlefield. Natural, organic, low-fat, heart-healthy, quote-unquote. Many of these terms are legally defined in narrow ways, but marketed broadly. Messaging often shapes perception more than composition. At the same time, food deserts expand into urban areas, obesity and metabolic disorders rise, natural and national dietary guidelines evolve, sometimes under the influence of lobbying pressures and industry research funding. This is not simple narrative. It's a system narrative. Food is now geopolitics. A drought in one country can ripple through into grocery shelves thousands and even millions of miles away. What you eat is tied to trade agreements, patents, subsidies, supply chains, and even power structures. And most of it operates quietly, not hidden, just complex, enough that people trace the map fully. From chemical additives to global dependency, the modern food system is no longer just about feeding populations. It's about scale, control, stability, and even influence. Now, did you know, in the late 1800s, borax wasn't just used as a meat preservative. Manufacturers publicly defended it is safe in small doses, arguing that modern chemistry was simply improving food, or that margarine was once so controversial that certain U.S. states required to be dyed pink, deliberately making it unappetizing to protect the industry from competition, the dairy industry. In the early 20th century, Coca-Cola originally contained trace amounts of cocoa leaf derivatives before reformulation removed the active compounds. Yes, Coca-Cola did have cocaine in it. At breakfast cereal, it wasn't just a convenient meal for kids or adults on the go. In the late 1800s, it was promoted as part of a moral reform movement designed to suppress indulgence and encourage discipline. During World War II, governments tightly controlled sugar and meat rations, conditioning entire populations to accept centralized food distribution systems as necessary and even more patriotic. Food has never been neutral. It has carried ideology, health narratives, economic battles, moral agendas, and political influence. And let that sink in, that last part. Food has been political influence. What ends up on the plate in front of you often reflects much more than just hunger. It reflects power. For 250 years, food has evolved along industry, war, technology, and power. From farm-grown sustenance to industrial formulas to global commodity, borax in meat, formaldehyde in milk, canned rations on battlefields, TV dinners in suburban kitchens, high-fructose corn syrup in soda fountains. Some changes made life easier. Refrigeration reduced disease, canned prevented famine, global trade expand access and variety. But convenience always comes with trade-offs. Not always health, sometimes transparency. Food today is abundant, engineered, stable, and efficient. But it is also centralized and optimized, deeply integrated into the economic system most people never see. The question isn't, is everything a conspiracy? No. The question is, do we truly understand the forms shaping what sustains us? Because food shapes our health. Health shapes society, and society shapes power. And power always leaves fingerprints. Even after every meal carries that history, every ingredient carries policy, every system carries incentives. The pantry isn't just storage, it's a timeline. Maybe it isn't a vault of secrets, maybe it isn't a mirror, and maybe the deeper question isn't what's done to our food, but how willingly we have accepted this system that delivers our food. This makes you think about what is really going on in our kitchens, in restaurants, and all over the world when we go to the supermarket and when we do eat out or enjoy our favorite meal. This has been this week's episode of The Conspiracy Atlas, talking about food and secrets from the last 250 years. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this episode. And did you know about some of these things that happened with borax or, coloring meat? How ketchup was invented. I know I didn't go into that story, but look that up. It's really, really fascinating how things have gone and how food has changed, been genetically modified over the past 250 years. It's absolutely mind-blowingly eye-opening and insane. But just, do some research, and I'm here to give forth to the idea of letting everyone know about what's really going on out there. The Conspiracy Atlas is here to tell you the truth about what's going on, and not to hide from the truth, but to tell everyone what is real. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And this has been this week's episode of The Conspiracy Atlas. I'll see you all in the next episode.